Hello and welcome back to Self-Spoken Storytime, episode 67, SCP-050. Item number SCP-050, Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. So far, all attempts to contain SCP-050 have been proven fruitless. Footnote 1. Testing to contain SCP-050 has been discontinued at this time. At present, whoever has possession of SCP-050 is to leave it in an office they use with regularity. Footnote 2. Attempts to leave SCP-050 in unused offices have resulted in it following its owner home. This is a violation of regulations and not to be allowed. Description: SCP-050 appears to be a statue of a monkey reading a book, approximately 1 foot tall. Footnote 3. One of the quirks of SCP-050 is that no matter what form of measurement is used, any record of said measurements will quickly be replaced by the customary system measurements. On the bottom of the statue are engraved the words, "To the Cleverest," in cursive script. The statue has so far proven resistant to all forms of damage. Footnote 4. Attempts to damage SCP-050 have resulted in increasingly lethal pranks. As of this writing, destruction testing is discontinued. As such, there is no accurate method to date the object. When left alone, SCP-050 has shown itself to be both useful and antagonistic to its owner. Footnote 5. See document 050. Although never seen to move, no matter the manner or amount of recordings, any room it is left in becomes very clean to a polish whenever possible. Paperwork is filed, trash is emptied, and in general, clutter is removed. However, SCP-050 also has a tendency to leave traps for its owner, so current holders should carefully check their offices upon returning. Document 050. The Great Researcher Prank War of Redacted. On 1 redacted, 20 redacted, during an attempted capture of SCP-963 by Chaos Insurgency agents, Dr. Bright made use of 963's intrinsic capabilities to make fools of the attempted kidnappers. When Bright returned to his office, he found a monkey statue waiting for him. His office had been tidied in his absence and everything filed away, which came as something of a shock for the naturally messy Dr. Bright. Upon further inspection, it was found that, despite the apparent tidiness of his office, all of his pens had been drained of all but the last bit of ink, and several important documents had been translated into Aramaic. Dr. Bright immediately began the usual testing of this new SCP, but found himself going nowhere, until Dr. Wrights, as payback for something unspecified, smeared his desk with 1/2 of a compound epoxy, and applied the other half of the compound to his utensils. At this point, SCP-050 vanished from Dr. Bright's office, reappearing in Dr. Wright's office, whereupon 050 began the cleanup again. After several tests, it became apparent that SCP-050 was easily contained as long as no one outside the Foundation proved to be cleverer than the Foundation scientists. Of course, this led to many of the Foundation scientists seeking to claim the title of most clever for themselves, and thus began the great researcher prank war of Redacted. Memorandum 050-A. No good will come of this. 05 Redacted. Entry 1. Bright to English. Dr. English accesses SCP-705. 705 is allowed access to approximately 100 pounds of similarly colored Play-Doh. After several minutes' conversation, the new army retreats to the ventilation shafts. No footage of Dr. Bright's room exists, but several hours later, Dr. Bright stumbles out, covered in little red welts and red Play-Doh, swearing and muttering. SCP-050 transfers ownership to Dr. English. Entry 2. English to Eisendorf. At 11:30 on Redacted, Agent Strelinkov is seen exiting his room in full rage, carrying a machine gun. Smoke pours from the open door of his quarters. Senior researcher Eisendorf is later found to be in possession of 050, proving that a good enough prank will attract 050's attention, no matter the target. Entry 3. Eisendorf to Kondraki. At 10:25 a.m., Redacted, Dr. Eisendorf returned from a brief coffee break to discover a typed note sitting on his desk, rewritten here. Dr. Eisendorf, it seems there was a problem with the Class A amnesiac you requested following your SCP-231 assignment. Please hop on the next plane leaving from the site, and wait until someone comes and picks you up so that we can get this all sorted out. Cheers, 05 Redacted. Despite factual and stylistic errors in this note, inappropriately informal style, the fact that there is no Overseer 3.14, Dr. Eisendorf apparently took the note seriously and became highly distressed. Dr. Eisendorf boarded the next airplane leaving Site 23, which turned out to be a regular scheduled flight traveling to Site 19. Dr. Eisendorf apparently did not realize this until landing, at which point he still waited over 8 hours outside the site before a guard found him and asked him what he was doing. Dr. Eisendorf soon confirmed that he had never been assigned to SCP-231 and quickly worked out what had happened. SCP-050 was observed in the office of Dr. Kondraki later that same day. Entry 4. Kondraki to Called. At 7:28 p.m., Redacted 2009, Dr. Kondraki was called away by Assistant Researcher Haas under the pretense of a SCP-173 containment breach. Security cameras recovered footage of the ensuing prank. Upon returning to his office, Kondraki pauses briefly when he reaches his door. Moments later, he is seen backing slowly out of his office, keeping his eyes fixed on something inside. It was later revealed that Dr. Kald had placed a replica of SCP-173 in Kondraki's office, positioned in such a way that it faced the door, establishing eye contact with whoever might enter the room. Kondraki continued to retreat until slipping on a hitherto unnoticed puddle of cooking oil. The replica of SCP-173, made of wire frame, papier-mâché, and spray paint, was relocated to Dr. Joseph Call's office, shortly followed by SCP-050. Entry 5. Called to Yorick. Upon returning to his office on Redacted 2009, Dr. Cald was surprised to find the statue replaced with a note reading, "I can't believe no one's thought of this." The statue was later located in the staff locker of Agent Yorick, who had simply stolen it. Entry 6. Yorick to Cald. Statue returned to Cald, Yorick's living space in utter disarray. Agent Yorick is found unconscious, the words, "to be earned," tattooed on his forehead through unknown means. Entry 7. Called to Light. From Redacted 2009 to Redacted 2009, maintenance teams were called 27 times to Dr. Cald's office while he was out, all having received orders to install, repair, or remove a piece of furniture from the office, apparently at random. Dr. Cald became increasingly paranoid about these intrusions, considering his possession of SCP-050, and at Redacted 2009, decided to bring his paperwork and the SCP back to his quarters and work from there. Upon entering his quarters, Dr. Cald was doused by the contents of a bucket, carefully balanced on the entrance's door jamb. Ownership of SCP-050 changes to Dr. Light. Entry 8. Light to Coleman. On Redacted 2009, Dr. Coleman was seen pinning a notice to the break room notice board, which read, "Due to the effects of SCP Redacted, all personnel who have received an amnesiac of any kind within the past 6 months are required to report to Dr. Light immediately." This was signed and notarized by no fewer than 17 members of O5 Command and senior staff. After seeing this, an email was immediately sent out retracting the information and causing mass panic among some of our more paranoid employees. After what can only be described as a bum rush on Dr. Light's newly refurbished office, resulting in the destruction of many items contained within, SCP-050 was found on Dr. Coleman's desk. Coleman to Okagawa. On Redacted 2009, Dr. Coleman was called out of his quarters by an email from an unknown source. 5 minutes later, security footage showed Dr. Okagawa entering Schumacher's quarters carrying a bag with unknown contents, and leaving the room a few minutes later without the bag. Upon returning, Coleman discovered a dead rodent, which appeared to have been slathered in the secretions of SCP-447. Personnel in adjacent rooms reported hearing a stream of profanity followed by a thud. Worried researchers later found him passed out on the floor, while the slime was later identified as green gelatin from the kitchen, and the dead rat as a rubber toy. SCP-050 was later found in Dr. Okagawa's office. Entry 10. Okagawa to Chapelsky. Video log, Redacted 2009. 12:34 p.m. Dr. Okagawa leaves for the cafeteria, presumably for lunch/late breakfast. Researcher Chapelsky is seen entering Dr. Okagawa's office, carrying several testing vials and SCP Redacted. left the office 5 minutes later, closing the door behind him rather hurriedly. Okagawa returns 10 minutes later, opens the door, and is snagged by a large tentacle which pulls him into the office and shuts the door behind him. A security team is dispatched to Okagawa's office and discovers him entangled by a giant squid. The team is seen trying to neutralize the cephalopod and free Okagawa. The animal's remains were subsequently destroyed. SCP-050 has been located in researcher Chapelski's office. Entry 11. Chapelsky to Jones to Chapelsky to Jones to Bright. Entry 11-1. On redacted 2012, researcher Chapelsky came into work at approximately 0800 and promptly received a pie in the face, courtesy of Project Director Jones. SCP-050 was found on Project Director Jones' desk later that afternoon. What? That wasn't original at all, Dr. Bright. Entry 11-2. On redacted 2012, Project Director Jones reported to his post researching SCP redacted. Upon entering the facility, he was met by Dr. Researcher Chapelsky, who threw 2 pies at his face. SCP-050 was found in Researcher Chapelsky's office 10 minutes later. Entry 11-3. On redacted 2012, Chapelsky entered his office to find Project Director Jones waiting for him with 3 pies, which he promptly threw at the researcher's face. SCP-050 appeared in Jones's workplace that evening. Guys, I think we broke it. Project Director Jones. Entry 11-4. In the middle of the workday, Dr. Bright entered Jones's research lab with 4 pies, which he threw in his face. As he was leaving, security footage records him saying, "This better not effing work." SCP-050 was on Dr. Bright's desk upon his return. Okay, no more effing pies, all right? Project Director Jones. Entry at number. Bright to SCP-732. On redacted 2012, an error occurred in the Foundation main database, reassigning System Technician Kent to a squad dia pound at stoping to Dread Lord Asatov, ! 1 pound star at G-side the cleaning crews during the ! Star at segging of casual hellfire. Assignment: Joshua Kent was ordered to ! Plus equals save the Princess Ashley from the Baron Blackstaff! ! 11! ! 2! Slash at AW sewage with several gallons of feces. 3 _ gold and platinum $9 equals 1 pound on his head. During the second half of the assignment, ! 0 and at Sir Kent and his friends, the Magical Knight Bob, star ! Had to test several star %, at pound super magic weapons, ! Despite the odor. During this time, a routine system sweep had found a at $! Barrel of pure awesomeness at $% at in the database. Despite the numerous nearby systems that could have been infected, SCP $! At 1337 Fout the Dreadlord on a volcano! 1 at $! Concerning System Technician Kent's assignment. System Technician Kent was returned to Site 23, largely unharmed. SCP-050 was discovered sitting by a hard drive heavily infected with SCP-732, with the statue seeming to consider the virus its new owner. Entry 13. Data expunged. Data expunged. Entry 14. Data expunged. Data expunged. Entry 15. SCP-732 to Light. On Redacted 2012, Dr. Light connected the SCP-732 infected hard drive to a scanner and asked 732 if it could produce lolcat images on request. Its response presented in the form of an 8,000-word erotic story featuring itself in the form of a man named Lord Kickass. Dr. Light and Redacted was that with the help of SCP-050 it can do anything. Dr. Light provided SCP-732 with scanned photographs of SCP-577, SCP-529, SCP-607, and 2 instances of SCP-331. SCP-732 produced 10 lolcat images for each photograph. Dr. Light then provided SCP-732 with SCP-637 in the form of a drawing by SCP-637-2. As a result of this, SCP-732 was rapidly overwritten with an estimated 63 gigabytes of text describing SCP-637's actions and appearance. Whether this information could have filled all available computer memory is unknown, as the last actions of the Lord Kickass instantation were to induce total mechanical failure to its hard drive, accompanied by catastrophic uncontrolled oxidation. SCP-050 was found in Dr. Light's office the next morning. Note: SCP-637-2 reports that SCP-637 was not harmed by its venture into SCP-732, but that its fur was really messed up. Note: other copies of SCP-732 seem unaffected by the suicide of Lord Kickass. SCP-051. Item Number SCP-051. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-051 and SCP-051-A are to be kept in a sealed containment facility. SCP-051-A is kept within a locked, climate-controlled document box with a viewing window to prevent degradation of its material. Any personnel, with the exception of pregnant or non-sterile female personnel who might not be aware of an early-stage pregnancy, may access SCP-051 as long as a request is placed beforehand and cleared by site administration. Description: SCP-051 is a 25 centimeter, 10-inch, anatomically correct model of a human female, carved out of ivory, with typically Asian features. Microscopic analysis shows that the head hair is human hair. The doll is jointed at the shoulders, hips, and knees. The stomach area of the doll is fully removable as a cap of ivory, exposing a detailed rib cage and organs, and a 2.5 centimeter, 1 inch, ivory fetus connected to the main figure by a leather cord umbilicus. When brought into the presence of a pregnant human, SCP-051 has various deleterious effects upon the pregnancy, generally resulting in miscarriage of the fetus. Reports include a gentle compulsion to handle the model, open its stomach cap, and take out the fetus. This results in nausea and cramping within 5 minutes, bleeding that begins as spotting and may progress to hemorrhage within the next half hour, and miscarriage within 2 to 24 hours in most record cases. Medical records indicate that the aborted fetuses bear moderate to severe defects. Pregnancies carried to term after exposure to the model have resulted in severely deformed live births, including redacted deaths of the mothers and redacted infants terminated after birth by the delivering physician. See Interview 051-1 below. Witnesses to these live births showed signs of severe emotional trauma that was alleviated after foundation interviews by administration of a Class A amnestic. SCP-051-A is a fragment of text on rice paper that was discovered with SCP-051. The surviving text is written with plant-derived ink, test dated to the 12th century, and the characters have been identified as a known early dialect of Japanese. Translation reveals the text is part of a prayer or spell against demons that attack unborn babies. The incantation orders these forces or demons into the model instead of a pregnant woman, and claims to trap them there. However, centuries have degraded the paper and ink so that the full incantation and instructions, if any, cannot be deciphered. Addendum SCP-051 and SCP-051-A were discovered in a box of early Japanese artifacts delivered anonymously to the Redacted Museum in 1938. After 60 years and a number of incidents resulting from contact by female secretaries, researchers, and students, an agent on staff in the museum's archives learned of its properties and obtained it for Foundation study. Interview 051-1. Interview 051-1. Interviewed Dr. David Ehrenfeld. Interviewer Agent Redacted. Forward. Dr. Ehrenfeld was the attending physician at the death of Martha Redacted, Redacted Museum, 02 January 1942. This interview was conducted off-site as Dr. Ehrenfeld was a resident of redacted nursing facility. At the time of interview, he was 95 years old and physically infirm, though retaining most of his mental faculties. A Class A amnestic was administered after the interview. Begin log, October, redacted, 20 redacted. Interviewer: Thank you for seeing me, Doctor. Dr. Ehrenfeld: You are welcome. I have outlived most people who would care to hear such stories. Then again, they surely would have thought I was telling lies or slipping into dementia. Now, you may think the same, but at my age, I do not care. Thin laughter. Can you tell me what you remember of the events of January 2nd, 1942? It was an ugly day, cold and ugly. Redacted. Can be a wonderful city sometimes, but winter is a bad season. It was late in the evening when my housekeeper told me I had been called. I was tired, but a birth is always a wonderful experience. I thought it would cheer me. Coughing, sound of the doctor sipping liquid. I had a nurse with me, but the girl never came back to my office after that night. 15 minutes, perhaps, for the cab to reach the museum from my house. I'm not certain, but I think so. The doorman was waiting for me. He led me to the room where they had poor Miss, redacted, laid out on a low table covered with some canvas ground cloths, I think, to make her more comfortable. What was her condition when you arrived? Thinking back now, I should have realized it was very bad, but I was young and had not much experience. She was quiet and only grunted with each contraction. She did not respond when I checked her vital signs and spoke to her. She did not even look at me. There was quite a bit of blood. A gush of it covered my hands as I reached down to begin helping her with the birth. The floor was slick with it underneath her, and the baby had not crowned yet. She was dilated well, and the contractions were quite close together, and this made me fear she may be having a breech birth. I showed a calm face, though. I did not want to panic my nurse or the researcher, Dr. Merrill, who was nearby, a dignified older man. I believe I wanted to impress him. A pause, breathing sounds, more sipping. And then, Doctor? I was concerned because of all the blood, that her life was in danger. I told her to push, and she was pushing. My nurse helped her, putting downward pressure on the abdomen. As I attempted to manually aid the infant's emergence, I will spare you the details of a breech birth procedure. It can be found in any obstetrics manual of the time.
I probed blindly and felt. I thought it was a coil of the umbilicus, perhaps tangled around the baby's neck. I almost withdrew, thinking that an episiotomy would be required, but she tore before I could proceed. There was more blood, and the baby began to emerge into my hands.
A pause.
I had never seen such a thing. You are a researcher. Do you know much of the common cephalic birth defects? This was uncommon. I thought at first that the infant must be stillborn. Its flesh was grey, not the vernix-covered grey of a normal birth, but lifeless and degraded. The smell of decay. I recoiled, but the poor mother screamed on her last push, and the infant was delivered into my arms with a great rush of hemorrhage. The deformity, unspeakable. The thoracic cavity was completely open, the limbs.
But it wasn't a stillbirth.
It looked at me. I heard the nurse above me beginning resuscitation attempts, then heard her gasp and falter as she saw what I held, gagging as the smell filled the room. I tried to drop the creature, but it clung to my hands. I felt my skin begin to blister and crack. Strange how clearly I can remember it. At my age, sometimes I cannot even remember what I had for dinner. The infant was almost double the length of a normal, viable fetus at 8 months. Its lower body segmented.
Coughing, almost choking. A pause of 2 minutes while the interviewer assists Dr. Ehrenfeld with a nearby oxygen mask. What did you do then?
It began to laugh, and I killed it.
A pause.
I broke its neck while it looked at me.
Were there ever any questions or consequences?
In 1942, with the country at war and 2 respected professional men to give their testimony, no. The museum building had a furnace. I disposed of the infant's body myself. We claimed some more normal defect had taken the lives of mother and child. The husband was a drunkard and cared for nothing but her life insurance policy. I believe he was drafted shortly thereafter and died somewhere in France. And I left my practice almost immediately. I never delivered another child.
End log. Closing statement. Dr. Ehrenfeld expired 4 months later of pneumonia.